My journey to expanding my English vocabulary began with a simple realization. I was limited in how I could express myself. While I could get by with basic conversations and writing, I often found myself reaching for words that weren't there. I had an okay grasp of grammar and could structure sentences, but the problem was that my vocabulary was limited to common, everyday words. This left me feeling frustrated, especially when I wanted to express more nuanced thoughts. It became clear to me that if I wanted to communicate effectively, I needed to significantly broaden my vocabulary. The first step in my vocabulary building journey was recognizing the importance of words. During my travels, especially to English-speaking countries like London and Singapore, I noticed how much richer and more engaging conversations became when people used varied and precise words. For example, during one of my trips to Cambridge University, I overheard a conversation where someone used the word elaborate instead of explain and exquisite instead of nice. These subtle changes in word choice made their speech so much more colorful and impactful. I knew then that if I wanted to improve, I had to immerse myself in learning new words. I started with reading. At first, I chose books that were slightly above my comfort level, ensuring that I would encounter new vocabulary regularly. I began reading a mix of classic literature and modern novels. One of the first books I picked up was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. The language was formal and sometimes challenging, but every time I came across a new word, I'd underline it, then look it up in a dictionary. Words like ardent, obstinate, and vexation weren't part of my vocabulary, but soon, they became familiar. Each new word I learned was like discovering a tool that allowed me to express myself more precisely. To reinforce my learning, I started using flashcards. I would write down new words on one side of a card and their definitions on the other. Every morning, I would spend 15 minutes going through these flashcards. The repetition helped cement the words in my mind. Additionally, I made it a point to create example sentences with each new word. This practice helped me understand not just the meaning, but also how the word functioned in different contexts. Before long, I had a growing stack of flashcards filled with words that were gradually becoming a part of my vocabulary. In addition to books, I also turned to podcasts and audiobooks. Listening to people speak in English exposed me to new words in their natural contexts. I remember listening to an episode of a podcast where the host used the word inquisitive instead of curious. It struck me how much more specific and elegant the word sounded. From that moment on, I made a conscious effort to incorporate words I heard in podcasts into my daily conversations. Listening to the pronunciation of new words also helped me feel more comfortable using them. Another significant step in increasing my vocabulary was watching movies and TV shows in English. Since I had already used movies to improve my grammar, I applied the same method to vocabulary building. I would choose films with rich dialogue, often pausing them to look up unfamiliar words. For example, I recall watching The Social Network, where I learned words like litigation, deposition, and plaintiff, which were new to me at the time. By watching the characters use these words in context, I could grasp not only their meaning, but also their proper usage. One of the more challenging but effective techniques I adopted was writing daily. I kept a journal where I would challenge myself to use at least 3 new words each day. The key was not just writing for the sake of it, but ensuring that I used the words correctly and naturally. If I wrote about a recent trip, I would incorporate descriptive words like scenic or serene instead of simply saying beautiful. Over time, I found that my writing became more expressive, and my vocabulary expanded naturally as a result of this consistent practice. As I continued to learn new words, I realized that my memory wasn't always perfect. Some words would slip from my mind, especially if I didn't use them frequently. To tackle this, I started using an app specifically designed for vocabulary building. It worked like a game, offering quizzes and word challenges. The app tracked my progress and repeated words I struggled with. This daily reinforcement helped me retain more words and made the learning process enjoyable. Conversations with friends also played a crucial role in my vocabulary building journey. I made it a point to use new words in discussions, whether they were casual chats or more formal conversations. I remember a moment when I used the word facetious in a conversation and my friend asked me what it meant. Not only did I get to explain it to them, but it also reinforced my understanding of the word. Over time, I realized that using new vocabulary in conversations was one of the best ways to truly internalize it. One of the more unexpected ways I expanded my vocabulary was through travel. Every new destination brought with it new experiences, and with those experiences came new words. Whether it was learning specific terms related to culture, geography, or history, travel broadened my understanding of the world and, consequently, my vocabulary. For instance, when I visited Egypt and learned about the pyramids, I encountered words like sarcophagus, hieroglyphics, and pharaoh. Incorporating these words into my daily language made my conversations about travel much richer. Despite all the progress I made, I often encountered challenges. There were times when I would learn a word but struggle to use it in context. Some words just didn't seem to fit into my everyday conversations. However, I didn't let this discourage me. Instead, I found ways to adapt by focusing on synonyms. If a word felt too formal or complex for casual speech, I would find a simpler synonym that conveyed the same meaning. This flexibility allowed me to still expand my vocabulary without feeling overwhelmed. At some point in my journey, I realized that learning vocabulary wasn't just about memorizing words, it was about understanding how words connect to each other. I began to study word roots, prefixes, and suffixes. By learning the building blocks of words, I could often figure out the meaning of unfamiliar terms. For instance, knowing that bio means life helped me understand words like biology and biography. This approach not only helped me learn new words faster, but also deepened my appreciation for the language. I also made it a habit to learn new idiomatic expressions and phrases. English is full of idioms, and while they aren't always easy to understand, they add flavor to the language. I found that learning phrases like raining cats and dogs or a blessing in disguise made my conversations more engaging and lively. Plus, idioms often helped me learn multiple words at once, further expanding my vocabulary. One of the most rewarding moments in my vocabulary building journey came when I realized that I could read more complex texts without constantly reaching for a dictionary. Books that once felt intimidating were now accessible, and I could appreciate the richness of the language. I remember picking up a copy of Moby Dick and feeling amazed at how much I understood without needing to look up every other word. It was a clear sign of how far I had come. As my vocabulary grew, so did my confidence in public speaking. I started participating in discussions and presentations, both online and in person. Having a broader range of words at my disposal allowed me to express myself more effectively and persuasively. Whether I was discussing travel experiences or sharing insights on various topics, I could convey my thoughts with clarity and depth. This newfound confidence was one of the most satisfying aspects of my vocabulary building journey. Of course, there were still moments of self-doubt. English is such a vast language, and no matter how many words I learned, there were always more to discover. However, I embraced the fact that vocabulary building is a lifelong process. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, I saw it as an exciting challenge. I made peace with the idea that I would never know every word, but that didn't stop me from continuing to learn and grow. One method I found particularly effective in retaining new words was storytelling. Whenever I learned a new word, I would try to create a short story around it. For example, if I learned the word melancholy, I'd write a brief story about a character feeling melancholic on a rainy day. By creating narratives, I connected emotionally with the words, which helped me remember them better. Additionally, I began exploring different genres of literature. While I initially focused on novels, I expanded my reading to include poetry, essays, and even technical writing. Each genre introduced me to a different set of vocabulary. Poetry, for instance, taught me more abstract and figurative language, while technical writing exposed me to precise and specialized terms. This variety ensured that my vocabulary was well-rounded and versatile. I also found that learning synonyms and antonyms was incredibly helpful. For every new word I learned, I would look up its synonyms and antonyms. This practice not only expanded my vocabulary, but also helped me understand the subtle differences between similar words. For instance, learning the difference between happy and elated, or sad and despondent, gave me a deeper understanding of emotional nuances. One of the most effective techniques I adopted was setting a daily goal of learning 5 new words. This small, manageable number ensured that I didn't get overwhelmed, and it gave me a sense of accomplishment each day. By the end of each week, I had added 35 new words to my vocabulary, and over the months, this consistent effort added up to significant progress. Looking back on my journey, I can see how far I've come. What started as a desire to improve my English vocabulary turned into a fulfilling and transformative experience.